It's the meeting for Tuesday, April 8th, planning board. Nobody here from the public? Anybody here to speak for the public? No? How about the minutes? Did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes?
Yeah.
A motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Hold on. There was one typo.
Okay.
You
All right, two typos actually. One was,
Oh, I can't second. I wasn't here.
I can just give these to Erica, but reduce the total square footage. It's missing a Q. And the other is in the last paragraph talking about a bullet list of things to actually be done. I think James said that the master plan committee could do that, not the planning board.
Okay.
That's my recollection.
Mm.
Right? Last paragraph there.
Oh, yeah. That's...
The master plan, what did you say? I'm sorry. What was it?
Correct.
The master plan committee.
Committee.
It's technically the master plan implementation committee.
Well, there you go.
We just keep adding words.
And that's all I have here if you want. So now, on the minutes, is there a motion with those
Yes,
changes?
with those changes, I motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I wasn't here.
Right. So Chet's abstaining. All right. No A&Rs, no old business, new business, Chapter 91 license application for the Nashwanek Pond Promenade Park. Jess, do you want to explain what this is?
Sure. So this is a required state permit that is going to be needed for the boardwalk project. What this application does is it's under DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, and the permit is solely for the 3 floating docks. And so we need permission from the state to to have docks as part of the project, and that's simply what it is. The original that Jesse has in front of him has already been signed off by the mayor as the official certification. It also had to be signed off by a zoning officer, so I signed off on behalf of that, and it requires a planning board signature as well. Once I have your signature, it can be sent into the state. And the permit takes several weeks for review, which is why we're expediting it, because we don't want to be stuck in July, ready to move forward with construction and not have this one state permit in place for the 3 floating docks.
Now, there's going to be 3 floating docks,
Yes.
and those are going to be for the launching, or is that in preparation of possible paddle boats and kayaks and
It's
things?
just a walk.
Access.
It's just
So
an
walk
access
through?
point. It's just an access point. So
Okay.
there's no ramp. There's no boat ramp.
Oh,
These are
okay.
floating docks that are going to be installed seasonally. They'll be removed in the winter time. So Parks and Recreation will be responsible for putting them in and taking them out.
Oh, okay.
So they'll be as proposed, and what the plans I'm showing you right now are the plans that were filed with the Conservation Commission for the wetlands permits. So I'm not sure if they're even on there. Yes. So this is what they'll look like. There'll be an aluminum gangway that allows access, and then the docks will be placed out. And everything is going to be handicap accessible because it's a recreation, public dollars. It has
That
to be.
was my next question.
It has to be ADA accessible, and that really is. This is a huge component of this project, is to allow for handicap accessibility for kayak and canoe access on the pond.
Oh,
So
great.
is this really 3?
There's going to be
Floating?
No. There's going to be. This is an example of one of them.
Oh,
There's
there will
gonna
be 3
there's
identical.
three-
Three of them.
Okay.
There's 3 of them throughout the site.
Great.
But this
Oh,
is
that's
this is
great.
an example of one of what they look like.
That's
all right.
really going to be great.
Aaron and I went to the 25% meeting. When is the
17th
75?
is the next meeting, and Conservation Commission, we're starting on the 14th, which is that Monday, and then on Thursday we'll be having another public forum, and a lot of that will be discussion on materials. So our consultants will come back and say, okay, based on the budget of where we're at, these are the materials that are going to give you the longest lifespan. These are this is going to be the required maintenance annually for these different materials, and so it's to present those options. And if people want, longer materials that last longer and have less maintenance, it's probably not within our budget. If people wanted to advocate for more money,
Right.
but,
Well, yeah,
but I can't have a
I
project
have
being held
to,
up,
I have
so.
to go onto your side, but
We have a budget, this is our budget.
I've
This is the
been
material,
areas where
so-
they've had wood, and 10 years later, they're almost rebuilding it, so.
Well, we're
Are you going towards more just between
We've had a
you and I
couple
and
of
the
different
lamppost synthetic?
I think right now we may be looking still at an iPay wood, which is it's almost like cement. It's so dense.
yeah.
It doesn't float in water. It sinks. It's insect resistant. It's mold resistant. You need special tools to even drill holes into it. It's really hard wood. It's what they've been using down in the boardwalks in New Jersey as they've been rebuilding. Out in Vegas, it's the wood that they use
Is that the one they
there.
just built out in the Cape too, that they have used out there?
I'm not sure what the
I know
material
they
is.
just redid one because it was falling apart.
I would say that based on what I heard at the 25%, and I'm betting Harry would corroborate, that maintenance and materials was certainly a focus, and a lot of people were concerned and talking about it. And so I think that they're taking that into consideration for
Right.
everything that's being done. I'm ready to make a motion,
Because my concern too was when in the boardwalk
just alerting you.
is, I don't know, I guess I'll have to go to the next meeting because of the fact that I had questions on not only materials being used, on how child protective is it, and of course handicap protection. The boardwalk is going to, how much of the Nashawanic is it going to span?
It's the total boardwalk is about a half mile in length.
Yeah,
So it's gonna go from close to the cemetery all the way around to the buildings.
okay. Is that going to be double railed or is it going to be
We're still
on-railed?
we're still working on the details, but everything has to meet building code. It has to meet the structural codes.
Maybe I should go to the meeting to
You
ask
should probably
these,
go to the meeting to ask these
because I
questions,
have a lot of
but
concerns.
about, I guess I'm not following, I mean,
Well, it's
it has to
on
meet
the-
code, it has to meet building code, it's gotta meet.
Right, so I'm figuring that
Yeah.
it would have to be, the railings have to be so much apart so you can't have a child slip through.
Right, there's building
Yeah.
codes that.
That was the only reason why I would like to see the plans to see how it is, so I best go and listen.
You should probably go and listen, yep.
Okay, thank you.
James?
Okay.
I motion to approve the licensing permit as it is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Probably the 8th.
Well, you know, I was going through the previous master plan, Jess, and on page 66 is where it starts, and it mentions how for future recreation use on the Nashawanic Pond, that a boardwalk be put in.
Yeah, it's definitely an
You know, I
item.
was on this, and I'm saying, I know we had mentioned it, and it was almost word for word, that on the open space and recreation plan, if you read it, that the boardwalk, and there's a couple of other things that, with Barnes Aquifer and that, but I don't think they have anything to do with it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though. That document really
Yeah.
is something we should all consider because it's been foretelling the future in many ways.
Oh, yeah, especially for open space.
All
I only
right.
brought that up because I saw it in master plan.
Requested opinions, there is actually one here.
Yes, I found that in your box this afternoon, sorry.
It's a ZBA application for a special permit. I don't know if anybody wants to look at this.
Is that
or-
right? I'll pass it down, I'll skim it.
I have to look at it first.
It's a home occupation at 19 Nipfer Ave, if I'm pronouncing that right. Daniel Norris Gardner of 19 Nipfer Ave. And he says, I am a photographer who shoots digitally outside my home. At the above address, I edit these photos on my laptop. No clients visit my home. I photograph and meet them in their homes or in a public space. I will not put up signage of any kind. I also photograph weddings as well as babies and family portraits. I alone will be employed at my home address. Am I understanding that this is some sort of application for a home
Yes, it's
business?
it's an application for a home-based business. All home-based businesses require a special permit in their zoning, and they all go before the ZBA.
Anybody else want to look at this? Anything you'd like to do on this or not?
No, I think it's, everything you read is right there. I think that they're looking for our recommendation
Well, they're required to notify us and ask our opinion.
So I think we have no
We
comment.
generally
want
just-
to give an opinion that,
I think that what we've been doing is not giving an opinion and deferring to them and
Deferred opinions.
just allowing them to resolve it. I don't think it
I
accomplishes
just think it was
much.
well put together, so it might have been.
Issue a compliment.
Yeah,
Just no opinion.
okay, just no opinion, I'll say that.
Should we make a motion to?
I make
not
a
render
motion
opinion?
that we have no opinion on,
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Administrative items, the CPTC conference, report from attendees. Anybody want to go a little?
Harry and Jim attended. Chet, did you not make it?
no, because I was,
I am certified, or certifiable, I'm not sure which, but
that's where I wanted to go for the certifications, and
they made me stand up in front of everyone. It was very embarrassing.
Oh, really?
It was. I didn't know
You
what to do.
embarrassed?
Do I nod my head like I'm getting a I'm just,
Right.
all I did was attend.
I
The
sat-
question I
What
have
do
for
you
you
do?
is, how'd you get to the, so far in front of the lunch line? I got down at 5 minutes past 12, you were already down, you were already through the line, heading out with a tray full of food.
Yeah.
How'd you manage that?
The meeting we were in before got out in a timely fashion. It
Yeah,
was quite
like
excellent.
what, quarter to 12?
now, let's not start a little
Well,
ruckus
well,
here.
back at you, because my last meeting went past, by about 20 minutes. I'll start if you don't mind. I really enjoy these conferences. I learn
Sick person.
a tremendous amount at them. I think they're worth it, and I'm grateful that the city takes the time to give us the education we need to improve ourselves. I had 3 great classes that really rounded off gaps in my knowledge. For me, without a doubt, the most important one was the Zoning Act, and I do regret that I missed your class. I would have loved to have
That's
attended
okay.
that. But
No worries.
there was a lot about the Zoning Act that I didn't know. I've just taken this as gospel because it's been handed to me as gospel, and I read it and try to follow it. But the why and the where and how it came about in the late 1800s in Boston, 125 feet is the limit because they don't want skyscrapers. And over the next
Right.
dozen or so years, Boston tweaks these rules until finally the Supreme Court ratifies it, and lo and behold, 1919, something like that, New York takes it on, and then what was it? Truman, I forget who, Hoover, something like that. He turns it into law in the 1933. It finally becomes law, rewritten in the 50s, and then rewritten again in 1975 is the last time the standards for
Yes,
the
I
laws.
remember that.
And that's what everything we have is based on. For me, that was fascinating. I didn't know any of that history. Didn't have that.
And are you aware that there is rezoning reform legislation currently in front of the legislature? Did they touch on that at all?
I would say it was the buzz of the conference.
Okay.
With one other exception, I like to make this, I'm talking a little bit, and I don't want to bore you about what I learned, because that was fascinating and important to me, and it really helps frame what we do, which improves my skills and my abilities here. But there was one other piece of information, besides some great networking and meeting people from other communities and setting up, come to Easthampton, I'll give you a dinner and I'll go to there. The biggest piece of information I got, the thing that people were really talking about, was joint hearings. Everyone was talking about it. Every table and every class I went into, people, and there were there was a group at our table that were successful and did it, and talked about how wonderful it is. They timed it and put it together, and people would come, and they didn't have to go before 3-4 boards. They just, one big room, everyone together, in, out, thank you very much. And so I want to bring it to our attention as maybe, it looks like something other communities are seriously considering, and it,
What communities spoke to it?
I'll have to get my notes. I didn't bring that with me. So all I can remember is I sat at the table when I did note it down. I just don't recall off the top of my head.
That's good.
Well, we've talked about it in the past as sort of this grand scheme of like being able to sit down in a room, right? Somewhere around here does this that you were talking about, where they can sit down
it's-
sort of
but
health
it's
department.
not,
and-
they're not open meetings. Those
No.
are, the city of Westfield has a round table that's for department heads.
Mhm.
It's not for board members. So it's, the head of the planning department, it's the fire chief, it's the police chief, it's DPW, city engineer, conservation agent.
Health
the
department, stuff
health
like that.
department, other building inspector, anybody else who has permits licensing board, that sort of thing. So it's a round table where people can come in, they're not open meetings, and so an applicant can come in and say, this is what I would like to do in this space, and each entity says, well, here's what you're gonna need to do for me, and here's what you're gonna need to do for me, and here's what you're gonna need to do for me, so that they get that information in one half-hour meeting or an hour meeting, rather than having to go department to department to try to set up
Oh, yeah.
meetings to figure out what
That's
they need to
great.
do.
See,
So
big
we've
thing.
talked about it here. It's, you know, we're not Westfield. We don't have tons of applications coming through every week. We don't have a lot of raw land where we've got new site plans coming before us. You know, what we've been seeing since I've started in 2 years is small businesses moving into the downtown. There's not a lot, I mean, there are things that need to be addressed with those small businesses. We've been having some conversations. I've reached out to the chamber to set up these first-time small business owner workshops, where we can have something similar, but it would be like a first-time home buyer workshop, like, you know, here, if you're gonna open a restaurant, here's the sort of things that you need to think about. If you wanna hold music, you gotta think about soundproofing. If you wanna, you know, just sort of run through the list, and this is what this permit does, and this is what you need to do.
It's education.
Educational, but the chamber would also be able to provide from their members, you know, an attorney that would be able to talk about some of the legal things they may need to run into. A real estate agent that would talk about lease agreements and certain things you need to be aware of during lease agreements. An insurance person that says, you know, here are the certain things that you need to think about when you're doing insurance. If you're gonna have children involved in it, you get different premiums. And so it's not just the permitting side, but it's the business side, and setting people up with the right resources to help them to craft a business plan. What I've seen recently, and I think you've seen it as well, is applicants coming in here that have a great idea, but don't necessarily have an understanding of what it takes to put that business or what it may cost. If they're gonna do music and they have soundproofing, they need to beat fire code, and that could be a $10,000 to $12,000 expense that they're not really thinking about in their business plan. They just wanna be part of Art Walk and part of the scene, the cultural scene that's happening, without thinking that they have to fit that into their worksheet in terms of what it's gonna cost to open it up. That's what we're seeing more of here. I still think it's a good idea to have this roundtable, and there's definitely people who would like to see it move forward, but we're not seeing the high ticks of development like other communities around us are seeing at this
So like,
point.
does Westfield just have like every Thursday or something?
Every
It's like
Thursday
a
at 10
weekly-
a.m.
Yeah.
Yep, and somebody coordinates it, one of the department head coordinates it. They get the applications or the proposals ahead of time, they send it out, so people have some sense of what people, but it's a closed door meeting. It's not open to the public, it's not an open meeting, just because it's department heads meeting with an applicant.
Right.
So it's different.
But so because of the volume, they can have a regularly scheduled
It makes
kind of
sense.
thing,
I mean, we could certainly do that on a as-needed basis
Mhm. We have occasionally had joint hearings, but that's a little bit more informal.
with the ordinance.
yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yep.
But I thought I'd bring it up because that, more than anything else, that's what people at the tables I was at were talking about, so, about how successful that had been for them.
Harry, how was your experience?
It was really good. I enjoy going down there myself. If you want to know anything or find out something, you can really, a lot of people down there that are really on the ball, that are really close to whatever they're talking about, they're really on up on it. The only thing I wish they had a better explanation of what the class would be like. Because sometimes you get involved in a class and you think it's going to be about something, and it doesn't turn out to be what you thought it was going to be. So you spend an hour there not really into what they're going to present. Last year I went down there, they're talking about what I thought they'd be talking about was putting in bridges and stuff and working on roads, and what they were talking about was putting in water lines and stuff like that. So it was like an entirely different kind of a thing, you know, because I figured I could probably find out what's going on, like what our bridge over here on Northampton Street, when they took it out. This is before that happened, so I could have really found out what was going on, and that's not what it was about at all. But anyway, I took up housing, I took up cultural districts and fair housing, and about the only thing I sat there for about 40 minutes hearing this guy talk about a B development and the housing class I went to, and I could have done the same thing and gave him a whole rundown on our Parliament Street Village. He basically talked about working with some guy who owned the land there, and the town got together, and they did a real good deal on their B development, because sometimes it's really difficult, you know, compared to a 40R, we'll say. And anyway, what I learned about that was something I never heard of, was forming a housing committee in town.
We have one.
And I don't even know that, so so I wrote that down.
We have the housing partnership. Alexis, who's your chair of the CPA
Right.
committee, sits on the housing partnership.
Well, that's good.
That's how she's on the CPA.
Okay, so then we
Don,
had,
you got any other suggestions?
so then we had a thing they call the housing trust. They brought that up.
Yes, and the housing partnership has talked about that. We're not sure if there's the political will to make it happen.
But anyway,
They've been kicking it around though.
that's about what I learned in the housing part, because I was pretty much up to speed with what was going on with that. So then I went to our cultural district class, which I thought was pretty good. I had a whole presentation for about 40 minutes from our Easthampton's town planner, not mentioning any names.
Who was that?
And she did an absolute fantastic job.
Oh.
I mean, fantastic. She told.
He's only saying that because I'm in the room.
Yeah,
She did it.
We'll get the straight deal later.
She did an absolute fantastic job in a presentation about what we have in town, what we don't have in town, the painters and the rentals, and how we went about getting our different things and stuff. And the lady that was working with you on that, she said Easthampton is a rising star in the Commonwealth.
Excellent.
So Easthampton is really out there, and then Jessica handed out some pamphlets about what's going on in town and different businesses and things. So it was pretty good. I mean, it was actually almost like an Easthampton presentation. It was like you're trying to sell that city. Is what it seemed like to me.
Marketing us.
It's
Come
exactly.
here and spend your money.
That's
damn
what
it.
we need, a lot more of it.
But the only question I have is as far as culture districts. I think this is going to be a real Achilles heel. Is trying to find adequate parking.
Yeah.
And we can have the best cultural districts in the world, but we can't find some place to park. I mean, what are you going to do to get there?
Well, just sort of follow up on that, I did have a conversation, the mayor's been having department head meetings, and so after the winter festival, there was 18 parking violations that happened during
Right.
the
Heard
festival.
about that.
A lot of it having to do with snow and people not knowing exactly where the lines were and stuff. But, so we did have a discussion, DPW director, and the mayor's office, the financial director, and myself about getting some municipal parking signs here for the municipal lot. Because this lot is never at full capacity. And it really is a very short walk. And once the boardwalk is in place, it'll be a natural connector to
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
bring people
Yeah.
up there. And so getting just some good signage in place about this is the place to park if the other parking lot is full. Is sort of a quick step that we can do to alleviate some of the parking up on Cottage Street. I also think parking problems are a good thing.
Yeah.
It means that people want to be here and they're spending time here, so I think it's a good indicator. I did have a conversation with the transportation folks at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission about updating a parking study. We had a downtown parking study last done in 1998. And so, and it was before we had the municipal lot, before we were here, and before the public parking on Cottage Street was in place, to see if they can at least do a study of what our capacity flow is during the week and on a weekend, to see if we are in fact having major parking issues and what those solutions might be to alleviate. We have a ton of off-street parking on Union Street that nobody knows about. Tons of it. But there's not enough signs to show people that
not
they can
advertised,
park there. It's not advertised. So if you don't know that a building has 20 spaces out back that you could pull into and park if you needed to, rather than park on the street, just having some of that knowledge of that there is parking available if you're accessing specific buildings, I think could make a difference as well.
Let's make a comment and ask
Yeah,
a
that's
question
it.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had a lovely oyster dinner at Popcorn Noir recently, and everyone that was coming in, we were talking about parking and the issues, and 3 separate couples that came in and mentioned, hey, why not tell people that there's parking behind Pace, and there's a buzz about that right now. So I think it's cool that that's exactly what you're thinking about, because other people are as well. But I just want to understand a little bit better, when might we see these signs?
Soon, I hope. I mean, you have to understand that was happening while snow removal was happening, and so DPW has been a little busy trying to deal with all of that. Now that the snow's melted and things have been cleaned up, I think I can reapproach them again, but it's a matter of them quoting me a price of what it's gonna cost, us determining locations, and then finding the money to actually put it into place. So I'm hoping soon. I'd like to see something in place, hopefully before the Cultural Chaos block party in June, but I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that'll be in
Awesome.
place or not.
Thank
So-
you.
The question I have, and I know you had mentioned that there are parking behind some of these buildings. Some of these buildings have tenants that have their parking spaces there. I remember one time, it was a while ago, that the Lions Club got together with the chamber and we did a block party, and we allowed people to park behind there, and it was chaos because the people who lived there said, "You're taking up my parking spot and I can't get in." So that it's okay to do that, but wouldn't that have to be coordinated with
You said you're doing a study too.
the
Well, but some of
people?
the businesses have parking
Some of the
behind,
businesses
and so
do,
what we're saying
but
is that,
some of
like,
them are combination.
Right, so they need to, so the property
so they
owners
have-
need to put up signs and say residential
Right,
parking
it would be
only.
up to the property owner.
Right. Well, I
Right.
think it's more educating people that you can park behind Popcorn Noir instead of parking in front of Popcorn Noir or something like that. That there are spots back.
Well,
there
I
you can
understand
use.
that, but you
Not at
sometimes.
Popcorn Noir.
No, but I'm
No.
saying in a business like that. I mean, if you have
Right.
spots,
Because there are businesses on Union Street that there is available parking in
Right.
there, even though there are people that live in the apartments
Sure.
there. There's more than enough parking in some of those
Sure.
back areas.
And quite frankly, that's part of your discussion, not that parking is, we don't have restrictions on parking for downtown businesses, but when there is a business that's coming before you, you should be asking as part of that discussion, do you have dedicated parking for your business, for yourselves as employees? If you have a lot of customer turnover, where are they gonna be using on-site parking or on-street parking, or are they
Sure.
expected to use off-site? Just so you can condition that signage needs to be put up, if that's the case. It's sort of your job to sort of vet that out on if they're gonna have a high number of customers and a high turnover, how are those customers expected to access the site? Again, there's no regulations in place, so you have to be very careful. But if they say, yes, we've got 10 parking spaces behind the building and the landlord's giving
Yeah,
us
there
2,
should be a sign
then
to
you can
state
say,
that.
well, then you need to, put signage up. And you
Right.
can condition that,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
so.
Good conversation.
Yeah,
All right, I got one more class I attended,
we did.
and I have a real hard time going to that thing. At first, I wasn't really sure what it was about, but then when they started explaining what it was all about, I have a real hard time dealing with it. And it's like, maybe if I was a younger person, I could understand where they're coming from. You know what I mean? Because to me, there's no such thing as fair. You know what I mean? Life isn't fair. So what they're basically saying was, if you have, well, say a development where you have, I don't know, it's 8, 9, 10, $400,000 or $500,000 homes, we'll say. Well, they want to plunk like 2 or 3, $200,000 homes amongst all these. You know what I mean? It's like, that's just what I got. It's like they want to make everything equal.
Well, fair housing is there's a lot of components, but one is discrimination. For
Yeah, well,
renters
what I mean
and
is,
sellers. So
yeah,
saying,
I mean-
somebody sounds Puerto Rican on the phone, and somebody says, well, I'm not gonna rent to you because you
Well,
sound
yeah,
Puerto Rican.
I understand all
That's
that.
one part of it.
I understand all that part,
Yeah.
believe me.
Okay.
But I think, if I lived, maybe if I lived in Springfield or something like that, I'd have a better idea what's going on.
Well, I'm
understand
happy to
it.
share with you, I just got a report from the Fair Housing Institute that just did an assessment of Easthampton and their recommendations for how to change the zoning and some other things that have come up recently in the city in terms of city councilors saying things at council meetings and no strong municipal action being taken against them, and how that portrays some fair housing issues in the city. So,
Negatively.
negatively. So, I'm happy to share with you a copy. I'm happy to email it out. We received it. I gave it to the Housing Partnership because we're now in the process of doing a housing production plan, and we have a whole fair housing section for that plan. But I'm more than happy to share it with the board, and you can take a look at it because there is
Yeah.
some zoning stuff in there.
Could you
So-
do that? Yeah,
Yeah, sure,
I
I'll
would
email it out.
appreciate
I
that.
mean, as the city gets bigger, as Easthampton grows, you're going to have more and more of that type of thing. It's just the way it is. I remember when I grew up, I lived over on Clark Street, and there was plenty of homes that were out, in the neighboring neighborhoods that were really, better than the place we lived in. I think my mother worked, like, her whole life. My dad had a couple of different jobs besides his regular job, trying to make ends meet. And it just seemed like if you wanted to get a better house to live in, well, you just either saved your cash or got a better job. I mean, it's just the way it was. Things were a lot different back then. I'm not saying they were for the better, but they were different.
Is there ever a thing or something that, like Easthampton, we're a small city, is there something that we'll just outgrow ourselves? Just
how you wanna
normal
define
growth
that?
where we're getting bottlenecked with available land because we have a lot of conservation land that a lot of contractors would like to have. But
There'll always be some amount.
there's
Well, there's
always something that will, but
Well, let me
the
rephrase.
way we expand, how we,
Well, we need to have conservation land, and we shouldn't be building on everything. There should be
Right.
places that should be protected for, against development, and that creates a well-balanced community. There's economic value to having open space in a community. There's lots of studies that'll show you that houses that are built along golf courses or along open space have a higher value to them
Right.
than those that don't. So it's important that we have open space for our health, for the health of our cities, the health of ourselves. There is the opportunity for redevelopment, which you're seeing a lot in Easthampton. We have huge mill complexes, one Ferry Street, that are in desperate need of revitalization and rebuilding. We've got a lot of investment happening in a lot of other places. Even some of our smaller buildings, there are developers, long-time standing developers in town that are looking to redevelop their own properties, take down something that was put up in the 60s or 70s and.
yeah, well, that's what I mean. It seems like it's not that we're gonna go and overgrow ourselves. It seems like it takes where you have to take out some of the old to bring back into some of the new.
Right.
It's not taking space, conservation space or land open space. It's a space that we already have and we have to look at, like you said, the mills. I can almost picture that someday down the road, I don't know if I'll ever see it, that maybe one of those mills is gonna come down and something else is gonna go up in its place.
You never know. But,
But that's the only way I can foresee more growth in Easthampton is,
there's other opportunities for places for development. I mean, honestly.
yeah, there
there's-
is, but
You know,
it's.
there are places that are zoned for development in town that still have vacant parcels on them.
Yeah.
And it's a balancing act because you want to increase your tax base. You need to be able to provide the services right now in the city, the schools, the city government, the police and fire. In order to do that, we need to increase, to have a growth in our tax base. So whether it's the redevelopment of properties and bringing their assessed value up higher so that we can tax them higher, or whether it's allowing developers to build on parcels that are zoned for development, still keeping in place those places that we have identified and protected for open
Right.
space. And there are certain environmentally sensitive locations and culturally significant locations in the city that need to remain protected. So it's a balancing act. I mean, that's what our job is to balance
Right.
both the growth and protect the open space.
Yeah.
So,
How can
Yeah,
he
that just help answer my questions in that. It's just,
mhm.
that may answer that too. Too bad we didn't have it on so somebody could watch it.
I turned it on.
Is it on?
How can Easthampton ever get to their 10%?
well,
How
we've
is that
got,
possible without a lot of growth?
well, the 10% is kind of, you're chasing the target. So anytime there's new market rate units that are going in, it offsets the affordable units. So you could consider things like inclusionary zoning, which requires that at least some number of affordable units are built in any development. So whether it's 10% of all of the units within a new subdivision, so if you've got 10 new parcels, at least one of those has to be built as an affordable unit. So, but we've got a lot of units coming online here within the next year. We've got 50 units over here at 15 Cottage. Those are all affordable units. We got 38 up at Parsons Village. So between those two, that's a big chunk. We also have 6 units that are going to be on the subsidized housing inventory for Habitat for Humanity. So we're going to have 2 that are on East Street, and then there'll be another 4 on Everett Street. So those, between, I mean, that's
That's
a,
great.
that's a lot
That's a lot,
going on
yeah,
right
it
now.
is.
That's a lot more than other communities, and I think continue to support the housing partnership, support with CPA dollars, support at meetings. There's lots of things that we could be doing.
I know, I was talking to the lady that was, the people are putting in Parlor Street Village, and I asked her, Miss Campbell or whatever.
Joanne, yeah?
Anyway, I asked her, I says, at the time, I said, well, how does Easthampton get to that 10%? I said, well, what we have to do as far as construction. And she told me you have to build 4 or 5 Parlor Street villages in order to get to the right 10%. And I'm saying to myself, that is an awful lot of housing.
But you have one Ferry Street. I
Yeah.
mean, you could put a good number of affordable units just at one Ferry Street. Any of these mills can convert units. I mean, we still have, of the 6 on Pleasant Street, of the 6 subdivided mills, only 4 of them are mixed use. We still have 2 that are in warehousing. If they ever decide at some point that they want to sell those buildings and somebody wants to go in and turn it into a mixed-use building, there's still opportunity up there for affordable units in 2 of the 6 buildings. So we also, the Button building here that has not been
Yeah.
planned for its top floor yet. So if the current owner ever decides to sell, I think there's opportunities, there's places, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of unseen opportunities that people don't really see it, but it's there. It's right in front of their eyes and you don't see it. It's great. That's good.
Anything else?
I'd like to make an announcement if I
Excellent.
maybe end on that, and this will be brief. I just wanted to commend the board and you for the very small role that we played in supporting Small Oven, who on Facebook I've learned has been sold out almost every single day since they've opened on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, they have. Yeah.
They made a birthday cake for me and a whole bunch of friends that were having a birthday. It was fantastic. Their breads are unbelievable, and they're the nicest ladies. So thank you all for
That's a good
adding
point.
that to my life.
Yeah.
No, I enjoy them too. They're great.
Excellent.
I remember when she first came here, looking for that home.
The
that
residential
home,
kitchen.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, she was really good. She put up with a lot, that lady. She kept on coming back and coming back.
She's
But,
fabulous.
but that really got things going though. We had to make an ordinance, and then we, so we could actually go about granting that thing, and then the city council passed it. It was, I mean,
With persistence.
The whole thing really, you could see it, all from the beginning to the very end. It was really
That's how
good.
economic development works.
Right? She didn't give up. She just
No.
got
She's
persistent there.
basically the one that created that. Because if she would have been right out front trying to get that permit,
Oh, for the
it probably never
residential
would have
kitchen.
happened.
Residential, yeah.
Yep.
That was good.
Yep.
She was good.
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Well done.
Off we go. Just
Do you need anything?
Camera?
Oh, yes, camera.
No, that is